all of this work, no matter how it happened, literally was the same title as the book, Deep, Dark, and Dangerous. It was, divers talked about their 10 eyes, which were their fingers, because when they were down really deep, it was pitch black. Al Trice and Phil Nuytten were certainly two of BC's commercial diving legends. They were a pivotal part of that diving revolution in two different ways, to be honest. Nuytco was the result of a deep, dark, and dangerous salvage job on a sunken barge. Al was diving with his partner Don Sorty at the time. And I think, if I remember correctly, they got 17 minutes of diving time. That was the safe diving time allotment given to them. And then they had 2 hours of decompression. So just the amount of work you could get done at that depth and in that freezing temperature was really very narrow. At the end of that job, both Al and Don came to the conclusion there's got to be a better way. So they decided what they needed was a little submarine, a little submersible that would take maybe 2, maybe 1, maybe 3 people and go down to about 2,500 feet. On a paper napkin, they designed it. And of course, it took 26 months and $100,000, and as rumor said, 3 marriages. They created a company, International Hydrodynamics, which became shortened, thank God, to Hyco, H-Y-C-O. And they launched their first Pisces 1 submersible in 1966. And a block away from Al lived this young kid who was a diver, Phil Nuytten. And Phil became a commercial diver himself, and Phil worked day and night and day and night to amass enough money, starting at age 16, and amass enough money doing commercial work that by the time he was 25, he had a stake and opened his own company called CanDive. And would go from there to invent any number of pieces of equipment, both for diving, but to build a number of submersibles, some of which were standing by. And it was just amazing to me that he would feel a need for something and go back and start working on it. So he built the Nuyt suit, which is the first modern atmospheric diving suit that allowed a diver to go down, basically encased in its own personal submersible or submarine, so that you didn't have to take that lengthy decompression time coming back up, and that you could go down and within 10 minutes after you did your diving checks, you were down the bottom working perhaps at 2,000 feet. And then you could come back up in about the same time frame. So it's with great pleasure. Phil and I go back a long, long ways too, but Phil has
so
just
we haven't had to kick the
yeah the motor off the back of the boat. Anyway, I just count myself so lucky to know this man. I mean, how many of us get to know a real legend?
We're heading to my office, so I've got all of this wild stuff here, but I have my own little, what would you call that? My own little ego box. So let's go have a look.
Sure, that sounds good. I'll follow you.
So for instance here, this is the Order of Canada. This is the Order of British Columbia, and they go on from there. This is a Métis Nation that I'm part of. This is diving on a wreck called the Breadalbane. It's the northernmost known shipwreck in the Arctic, and that's me diving in the suits. And we have little kiddies coming here also, which are a lot of fun for me and them. But I remember some little guy, and he was kind of like, I don't know what you call it, but he was kind of the guy that knows. He said, "So what are you doing now? What are you making?" And I said, "Well, we're making something very, very very difficult to make, but we're making." Well, he says, "Well, what is it?" He said, can you tell me what it is? I said, oh, come over here, I'll show you. We're doing the cow sub. And he said, the cow sub? I said, yeah. It's not fair for us to get all the fun. Your cows, the animals, they don't have snorkels, they don't, so we fix them up. So that's the cow sub. You see this gentleman here with his porpoise, and he's got one of our suits on heading up the surface. And this was given away at the Explorers Club in the U.S. And so there were two of these made, one for me and one for Jim Cameron. Yeah, he's a good guy. He really is. We worked with him on so many things, as you can see up here, on the Abyss and on Titanic. We did the work inside Titanic, and this was doing, as you said earlier, the ROV, remotely operated vehicle. We built them especially for the Titanic, put it down at the 12,000 foot mark, and it went inside, and then we were filming inside. Isn't that strange? While all this was going on, I was also doing a lot of work under Helen Neal, who was a master carver, trained under for carving and painting and whatnot. And she was absolutely terrific. And I must admit, asked her a lot of questions. So one day she said, Phil, you asked me so many questions. What are you writing, a book? And I immediately switched that switch on, said, well, I was thinking about maybe writing a book. She says, well, make damn sure that I'm in it. And that is the lady that taught me to carve. And so she got her book. This is Vancouver Divers Supply. And this is up in the Kitsilano area, not too far from where I went to school. And it's 1966, I started this. And this was the first divers supply place, or whatever you want to call it, diving shop, the very first one in Vancouver. And there's me inside, way, way back. I had a wonderful time in that shop.